Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 240. I was black here. My opponent played e4. I play e5, and he surprised me with the very dynamic move f4, the king's gambit. So there's lots of different ways to play the king's gambit. You can play bishop c5 is the most common way to decline the gambit if you don't feel like playing. That's a reasonable, if you don't feel like playing into the gambit, I mean, that's a reasonable way to decline. There's also a counter gambit starting with d5, which is also, if you look at the chess engine, d5 is a reasonable way to play as well, and should be good for equality at least, and a way to stay out of gambit lines and get an open position. With the bishop move, sometimes you get a more closed position. Or you can play what I did, just take the pawn. And that's the main move here, and it's good for black in general, but it's complicated. So let's see, knight f3 is the main move, but there's also the bishop gambit with bishop c4, knight f3, and then g5 is generally what you want to play here. You want to hold on to this pawn. This pawn is what you got in exchange for the gambit, and if you just give it up right away, then white has easy development. For example, if you were to play, say, d6 and d5 and knight here and just let him grab the pawn, well, it shows equality, but white has a little more space in the center. It's got his pieces on good squares, and I would like white in that position. So you want to try to hold on to this pawn for a little bit. It cramps the development of his dark squared bishop. So g5, typical move. And then the most common move here is h4. So let's go ahead and show that. This is kind of the main line. h4. Oh, it was a short game, so I'm going to go into more detail in the opening here than I normally would. h4, just is undermining this pawn here and trying to weaken it, and encouraging you to push on with g4. And now there's two moves here. There's knight to e5, which is probably the main line, and then there's knight to g5, which is a gambit line, because the knight has no squares from here. All these squares are covered. So what you do is you play h6 there, and knight takes f7. And what's interesting, of course you got to take it. What's interesting is that if we look at the material, let's see, it's 3 pawns up against 3. Yeah, so the material's even, except that white is just down a whole piece. But the score, according to the chess engine, is only minus 0.8, which means that white has a tremendous amount of compensation for this piece. And it can start by trying to chase your king around. It can be a little bit tricky to play. A lot of times you need to start giving back material with moves like d5, just to open up lines for your pieces quickly, because if you don't get your pieces out and close to your king, you're going to get slaughtered over here. So you end up giving back a couple pawns in order to survive. But you should win a game, actually. If you play correctly, you should win that game. So the other way to play, which is the main line, which is knight e5. And this is, if you look at more recent games played in the King's Gambit, say, after the 1950s, you'll find this is the most common line. And then there's an attack on this pawn over here, which can't really be defended. h5, okay, you can try to defend it. Looks like knight f6 is the main move. Rather than trying to defend it, it's more common to try and counterattack. And then bishop c4, where's this going? Putting pressure on this pawn. d5 to stop the bishop. E takes. If the bishop takes, then you just trade it off with the knight. And now bishop to d6, yeah, to block the pawn. And let's see, let's look at the count. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, actually the material is even here. And well, this pawn is defended by the bishop and the knight. So I guess it's one of these dynamically balanced positions, and white can, or black, yeah, white can castle here, and black can probably castle as well. And you see the engine rates this position is about even. So that's one way to play. Let's see what I've usually seen here after after knight f6. So white has just played knight e5. We're looking at this line. Knight f6, trying to put a defender on this pawn. Usually they grab the pawn here. That's what I've seen. And then you can grab this pawn. And again, you get one of these positions which is balanced. Chances for both sides. White's or Black's kingside pawns are completely messed up. He's still a pawn up at the moment, though, and yeah, development is about even. So those are kind of typical ways to play the king's gambit. What my opponent played here is a second choice here, bishop c4. So let's look at this line. And I usually play the move bishop g7. It looks like you can also play the move g4 here. So let's check this out. g4 harassing the knight. Yeah, this is one of those funny lines where White just castles. He says, okay, go ahead and take my knight. And after pawn takes, queen takes f3. So again, he's banking on, he's given up a whole piece, but he's banking on having a lot of counterplay. So those are kind of interesting lines here. I chose the simpler line, bishop g7, just trying to keep the knight out of this square here. If the knight bops in here, then he's got pressure on f7. So my opponent castled here. I think d4 is the most common move. Let's check that out. And then what's the way to play here? Yeah, d6, just trying to open up a line for your bishop, try and hold back the pawns. And now h4, trying to undermine. And you see the game continues here. It's still tricky. But there's a slight edge for black. So you can play this way and get a decent game. And I encourage you to try and play into the gambit and get some experience with these lines. They're kind of fun to play. I just have to be extremely aware of all the tactics. Okay, so let's go back to the game. What my opponent, so I played bishop g7 and my opponent castled here. And then I played h6. Now the idea with h6 is to defend the g-pawn, which currently it's defended by the queen, but I want to play the move knight to f6, which would block the defense of the queen. So I want to defend it with the h-pawn. It's also important to notice in those other lines, when I was talking about h4 here, for example, you can't really defend with h6. Oh, actually you can in this case. I'm sorry. That's another motivation for the bishop on g7, is it actually defends the rook. So it is possible to defend with h6 at this point if you just want to try and hold on to those pawns. If the bishop weren't there, then pawn takes, and this rook would be exposed on the h-file. You'd lose a piece. Okay, but the game went castles, h6, defending here. Instead of h6, yeah, I could have played d6 at that point, but h6 was played. And now my opponent went d4 and I went d6. So we got a pretty standard setup, and it's common to continue with c3 here. c3 is approved by the engine, just shoring up the center. Just White at this point is playing for, well, he's got a big center here. He's going to try and hold on to it and get his pieces out and attack with his pieces in these lines. He developed knight to c3, probably not a bad move, and I should probably just develop my knight to c6, but I've had some problem in these positions before, so I like to play the move c6, just keeping his knight out of these squares. And you'll see, well, I don't have a strong advantage as before. There's still some edge to black. So let's go and look at the notation tab. So we'll just look at the game from here on. c6, he went bishop d2. I'm not really sure about this. He's got to develop the bishop somehow, I guess. That's the problem. I've got this strong barrier, and he's got to find a way to develop this bishop. Okay, now I can get my knight out and castle. He pushes on with e5 immediately, trying to make my pieces a bit awkward. I take. And so, yeah, I've kept an edge all the way up to this point, and now he sort of gives the game away. This tactic just doesn't work here. He takes here, and then he can grab a pawn with knight takes e5. But you know, it's just he's just given up a whole piece, and he's just equalized the number of pawns. And there's not without the light squared bishop, a lot of the interesting attacking ideas are gone. I mean, you can see that I'm really weak on the light squares here. but he hasn't got a light squared bishop to take advantage of it. But he does have a queen, so you know, you have to be careful. King g8, and you'll see actually I don't defend in the most accurate way. It comes up. So, but for now at least I'm just a piece up, and I should be fine. But there are issues here. My rook is locked in, for example, and my king is a bit awkward. So I want to kind of move my king over here and bring my rook out, and then I'm probably okay. And I have to worry about this diagonal here. Okay, so knight e2, bishop e6. Yeah, maybe I should have tried a king move right away. Was the chess engine recommending anything? Could I have just played king to h7 here? Could have. Bishop takes f4 is an idea. Let's check this out. Bishop takes f4, g takes f4, and queen to d3 check. Yeah, opening up this diagonal always feels a bit risky, putting the king on that diagonal. So the king runs back to g8. So it's premature to try and run the king to g8 at this point. So I play bishop e6. Maybe bishop f4 would an interesting idea. Knight b d7 is the chess engine's recommendation, which is kind of funny. I didn't want to block the bishop, but maybe the idea is that the knight on d7 is just going to get traded immediately, and then I can bring the bishop out. Okay, so anyway, I played bishop e6, and he played rook e1. He could have tried this bishop takes f4 idea here, it looks like. Rook e1, I develop my knight, and he comes in knight g6, good move. Rook h7, not a whole lot of choice there. The rook was attacked. Yeah, that's the problem with black's position. You know, he's advanced these pawns, so there's just holes around his king here. But with the extra material, he should survive. Okay, so now he sacks a knight on f4, and it's interesting that the engine is recommending the move bishop to g4. Bishop to g4 or g takes f4. I don't know why. I didn't notice during the game. I did not take the knight. What was I thinking? I noticed my bishop was under attack. I didn't notice that he was sacking the knight. I just moved the bishop. Huh. That's funny. Well, it was kind of a discovered attack. If I take the knight, he's going to take the bishop. So, okay, so that's why bishop to g4 is a move here. You move the bishop with tempo, getting out of the discovered attack, attacking the queen, and his knight is still hanging, so he's got two pieces hanging. Okay, so backing up in this position. That's the tactic. The tactic is knight takes f4, attacking my bishop, and I should move my bishop with tempo, attacking his queen, and win that way. Okay, so I missed that during the game. I don't know what I was seeing. Okay, well, I noticed my bishop was under attack, so I moved it to d5. And now it looks like he can get a nearly equal position with this knight e7 check. And king to f7. How about if I go king to h8? Well, if I go king to h8, he can repeat. Oh no, he can bring the other knight in and checkmate me. Okay, sorry. So king to h8 is completely out. So I can go to f7 or f8. So I go to f8. Again, this knight move might be good, but the engine is recommending bishop to b4 here. Setting up a nasty discovered attack on the king. So caution is in order. It looks like king to f7 is the only way to keep the advantage here. And then knight f takes d5. Grabbing the bishop, c takes d5. And okay, and then there's a bunch of moves that white can play here. But the chess engine thinks, okay, after a little bit, it still thinks black is good. Yeah, it's hard to find a winning line there. Let's see, did I play something wrong? I'm just looking at this, how the numbers changed. Knight f takes d5. Knight f takes d5. Okay, I moved the wrong knight. That's the way. Knight takes d5. Queen to h5 check. King back to f8. Queen to f3 check. Bishop to f6. So yeah, it looks like, and then now knight takes d5. Yeah, it looks like white has a lot of pressure. He still is down a piece, But he's won a pawn, and he has bishop b4 check. So okay, so that's the way for white to play the attack and continue pressing, although with careful play, black should survive this and go on to win the game as well. Pretty interesting, but kind of typical of what you see in the King's Gambit. Okay, bishop to d5. He played knight takes d5 right away, and I took back. And now he played c3. Okay, good move. Queen f6. Queen c2. So maybe queen c2, not the most accurate. What is it? Queen h5 rather. The engine is recommending queen c2. Okay, trying to get on this diagonal. These weak light squares are really showing up in these lines. Okay, he played queen h5. I went knight to f8. And now, let's see, knight e5 is the best way to play, or rook f1. Okay, but he played knight to e5, and I went knight to f4. Okay, just trying to chase his queen away, and now the queen should just run back to d1. He tried something else here. Oh yeah, he tried rook f1, and this just fails. I mean, it looks like he's pinning my knight, but the knight grabs the queen and defends my queen at the same time. So this is a very common tactical pattern, as a way to get out of an attack. If you can take your opponent's piece and defend your own piece at the same time, this is a big advantage. Plus, getting rid of the queens means my opponent's attacking chances are gone, and then he just gave up his knight here for no particular reason, and then resigned at this point. But really, the fatal mistake was that rook f1 move. So before rook f1, yeah, just queen d1. I mean, black still has the advantage, but he still has opportunities. It's not an overwhelming advantage. Black with careful play should go on to win, but but there's still chances to attack. So it's time to just regroup and come back again. live to fight another day. That's the what white should be looking for at this point. Okay, so anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting game, if short, and marred by a few mistakes, but it shows many of the common tactical themes of the King's Gambit, and you got a little bit on the opening. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.